Hey, what's going on, everybody? Christian Ballard Sports Media, coming at you with a video today. We're looking at Texas for 2025. And on my end here, by the way, I hope it turns out okay. Maybe it's something, a glitch with my computer or something. It looks like I'm moving pretty slow, but we're here. Oh, now it's looking like it's normal. So, anyway, Texas 2025 preview, college football. Let's get into it. Texas obviously made the playoffs last year, made a pretty good run, came up short of a national title appearance, and possibly what could have been a championship season. Obviously, Quinn Ewers has been the go-to guy for Texas the past few years, and Arch Manning is projected to start this next season. I think he's got to be the highest rated quarterback left on this roster for 2025. But I thought Texas overall had a great season last year. I really did, and I think a lot of people should not shame them because they fell short again in the semifinal to Ohio State. They didn't really look that good in that game, but I think it was just one of those years for Ohio State where after the Michigan game, they wanted to go in to the playoffs and show what they showed early on in the season. And I give Texas credit. They did win some playoff games, obviously lost to Georgia twice, and then Ohio State finished with three losses on the year. Clemson, they beat. Arizona State, they beat. I'm actually surprised that was actually a close game and it went to double overtime. For a while, it looked like it wasn't going to be a close game going into the game. And, you know, Arizona State really just got the bye because they won the conference and all this stuff. But I do think Texas is a really good team. I think that they're recruiting greatly. When you look at their upcoming roster for 2025, Jahdae Barron is listed as the top returning back, but I also have heard where he's declaring for the draft and people are putting out draft profiles for Jahdae Barron. So I really don't know quite yet if he's going pro. You have a senior defensive back, safety, corner, whatever, and Malik Muhammad. Warren Robertson comes in, a freshman, 4-star from Red Oak, and he's 6 foot, 190. So I could go down the list. I don't want to bore you with the whole roster deal and what they have. And I mean, I think the basics to look at for Texas is it's Arch Manning's show. And they're still going to have one of the more productive offenses, probably the best in the SEC next year, and one of the best in college football. And I think it's shown that Steve Sarkisian is an elite head coach right now. I will take that to the bank, and I will rest on my grave saying that he is an elite head coach. And I think that ultimately, when you look at um, what he's been able to do in recruiting and the portal and everything like that, it's been spectacular. He comes from Alabama and USC, and I think a little bit at Washington as a head coach. So he's had some great experience. He's had some ups and downs. He's got a great testimony, and I like that about Sark. Uh, Overall, he's an offensive guru, and I think he's even got a good defensive plan going too. I think that you've seen small improvement and major steps forward with Texas's defense since they got into the SEC this past year. They knew they were going to have to adapt and get it going. The old joke about, well, Texas and OU and the Big 12, they don't play defense. Well, we saw with both of those teams, especially with Oklahoma and Brent Venables, that they can play defense, they can improve, they can recruit on that side of the ball. So I credit Texas there. What they did last year, they lost to Georgia twice before they lost in the semifinal to Ohio State. They were able to beat teams like Clemson, which I don't consider to be a fluky win. I think that's huge, especially considering Dabo Swinney's history of the playoffs and everything. And then Arizona State, like I said, closer than I thought it was going to be. Were there any games on this schedule that they won that maybe you look at and say it could have been better? I like the Vanderbilt team from last year, but I think even I mean, I might take this back now, but Imma say with Arkansas being a 10-point win and Vandy being a 3-point victory on the road, I mean, you would think that Texas does better in those games just because of who they are offensively, but credit to Vandy for making a bowl game, winning 6 or 7 games, and then Arkansas, I guess they had an okay year, but I still would think that Texas would have gone in there and beat them by more than 10 points. I could get if it was 17 or 20, but 10, I don't know. They kinda had their miscues a little bit this season, in my book, but go ahead and look at this year's schedule. They open with the defending national champion in Ohio State. They play San Jose State at home, UTEP, Sam Houston. Obviously, 3 of those 4 are wins for Texas, unless something wild and wacky happens. Then they get their bye week. Everyone gets 2 bye weeks this year. I'm starting to think it's not because of the calendar. I'm starting to think they're actually doing that because of the college football schedule or something. But they do get 2 bye weeks here again. Off the bye week, October 4th, you got to go to the Swamp. You hosted Florida last year. That could be a tricky game at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, especially if the SEC puts that at night. The Swamp could be rocking. And again, I believe we haven't looked at Florida yet, so we still got to see what they're capable of. I could be wrong on that. Maybe we have, but at this moment, I would say that Texas should be better than Florida, will be better than Florida, and even if it's a close game, I would think that Texas would pull it off. Oklahoma and the Red River rivalry in Dallas. I'd say it's no problem, but Oklahoma finished the year pretty strong. They bring a lot of production back next year. They do lose Jackson Arnold at quarterback to Auburn, but Oklahoma in a rivalry game, be careful there. At Kentucky, at Mississippi State, should be no problem. Vandy, we'll see what Vandy looks like. Was last year just a miracle, fluky year? I don't know, but Diego Pavia is supposed to come back, and we'll see what he looks like in 2025. And then you get a bye week. Then you get an interesting stretch here. Not really interesting, but you're going to Georgia, a team that beat you twice last year. I'm not here to troll. I'm not here to put you down. You go to Georgia. All I can say is this: if Georgia figures out their quarterback situation pretty good, they will have a monster defense too. But if they figure out their offense with incoming receivers and quarterback play, they have a really good chance to beat you for a third time. And uh, I don't know. I just don't trust Texas on the road in Athens there. I even said that about Alabama going to Athens. I just don't trust that environment much for any opponent. Arkansas and then Texas A&M. At most, I'll make this one quick on you guys, by the way. At most, I'm gonna say you hit 10-2, which is still good enough for the playoffs. You probably still make the SEC championship because your second loss is gonna be Georgia. But your first one, I'm gonna say you do lose in Columbus. You could go there and win, but Ohio State has a lot of young talent to come back next year to try to repeat as champs. And, it is a tough environment in the shoe. This is going to be the opening kickoff game. It's a home and home. Ohio State goes to Texas in 2026. I would look at this and I would say ultimately that This is probably going to be a night game, and if it is, yeah, better luck to you, Texas. I don't know, but San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston, those are three obvious wins. Florida is most likely an obvious win, but again, we'll see what they look like. Kentucky, terrible. Mississippi State, terrible. Vandy, improved last year, but who knows what's going to happen in 2025. Arkansas, I don't want to say they're terrible, but you should beat them. Texas A&M, you're just better. Georgia and Ohio State are both on the road, and I look at those and I say Texas could like go in there and knock one of them off. I think most likely is probably Georgia, but if I'm giving you my current feeling, I don't trust Texas in those games because you lost to Georgia twice last year. And then, of course, you had lost in the semifinal pretty handily to Ohio State. So, again, last year doesn't really mean much for this year. I know that. I understand that. But based on recency, unless Texas finds a way to get this revenge factor in their hearts and their guts and in their heads of seeing both of those games, and especially with Georgia, man, like it's hard to beat the same team twice in 1 year. And I know they came close in the SEC title game to knocking Georgia off, but you still lost to them twice. Like and that's not a bad team to lose to twice, but it's really honestly, I don't understand how teams don't like Texas at least. Like if Georgia played Vanderbilt twice last year, well, let me put it to you this way. I think Georgia played what Mississippi State. Had they, ha- and I know Mississippi State's terrible right now, but still Georgia would have beat them 5 times in a row. They could have played them every single week. They'd be 12-0. You know, I don't feel that way about Texas with Ohio State and Georgia. Now, I'm giving you those losses. Yeah, I don't trust Texas, but I still would say not a 9 times out of 10 are these opponents going to beat Texas. But I would say 7 or 8 out of 10 times. I mean, at some point, you gotta give Texas the football and say, "Hey, don't fumble. There's no way you fumble this away." Now, could they win these games? Sure, absolutely. That I could see them going 12-0, but it's hard to predict that. They could easily go 11-1 and pick one of these up. I would say most likely between these 2. Again, I mentioned Georgia. Uh, Losing Carson Beck to Miami, quarterback probably going to be Gunnar Stockton, I would assume, unless Jaden Rashada could come in and do something. But either way, you're going to have a little bit like Stockton had some good experience last year, and he looked okay when he came in. But let's say if it's not him, or let's say something happens to him, do you trust Jaden Rashada to come in as a freshman? Um, ah, he's good. He's a really good talent, but Georgia and freshman quarterbacks and young quarterbacks are not always the best combination, at least from what I have seen. I mean, you remember the Jake Fromm years, and I'm not trying to put him down. I'm not saying he's not good. He's just, they might have made a national title, but he still kind of had some ups and downs that year. But anyway, that's another topic of conversation for another day. So I look at this. I look at Texas. I say 10-2 with losses to Ohio State and Georgia. Let me know where I'm wrong on this. Drop it in the comments. I love y'all. Jesus loves you. God bless. And we'll see you next time here at BSM. Y'all have a good one.